Aussies love their workhorse utes, and this one takes it to the next level. It's called the Ford Ranger Super Duty, and this is our first up-close and personal look at a car that could seriously shake up the four-wheel drive market. But before we get into all the nitty-gritty, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit us with everything you think in the comments. First though, a little bit of background. Now the Super Duty name until now has been reserved for those big F trucks over in the United States. They're the biggest, heaviest, most hard-working versions of those cars over in the US. But now the name has been applied to the Ranger in Australia. But that is oversimplifying things massively. It is more than just a branding exercise, it's more than just a badge across the front of the car. This thing has been seriously re-engineered, and it also looks a whole lot tougher. You get that when you compare it to a regular Ranger. The bonnet, for example, is unique. You've got unique wheel arches, front and rear, standard snorkel, big, tough steel bumper on the front. It rides a lot higher than your average Ranger, and the tyres are out wider. They're also big, chunky all-terrains. And because of all that, it's now classified as a light truck. So there are some little touches that had to be applied. Bigger mirrors, for example, and these side repeater lights, they actually have to be brighter. So all these little touches to turn it into the Super Duty that you're seeing here. It's all about preparing the Ranger for three main areas: carrying more, towing more, and going a lot further off-road. Crunch the numbers too, and the Super Duty mounts a heavy-duty case. The GVM, or gross vehicle mass, is 4.5 tonnes. So it means you can carry people and luggage around about 2 tonnes, which is about double your average ute. The tow capacity, 4.5 tonnes, about a tonne more than most utes on the market. And the all-important GCM, or gross combination mass, which is the weight of the car, the trailer and everything in them, that is a full 8 tonnes. So that means you can tow 4.5 tonnes and still have around about a tonne of payload for all your people and gear and everything else. So it is a seriously tough truck from a load carrying perspective. And it's under here where so much has changed. Ford has basically re-engineered the entire chassis of the Ranger. So it's got thicker steel, stronger welds, more cross members, and you've also got much better underbody protection. So big 5mm thick steel protecting what is a larger fuel tank, 130 litre fuel tank here. So it can give you upwards of 1,000 kilometres of range. So also you've got a much higher riding car. Ford's not saying exactly how much at the moment, but 60, 70 mils, something like that. So much better ground clearance, far better off-road capability. Under the bonnet is Ford's 3-litre V6 turbo diesel engine. Now, along with the 10-speed automatic transmission, it's been recalibrated and retuned, not just for the heavier duty hauling, but also for stricter EU6 emissions regulations. It's also got a new transfer case, low-speed transfer case, as well as locking diffs front and rear. Plus, there is additional cooling, so as well as more air coming through that unique grille, it's got a more powerful fan to keep things just that little bit cooler. Now, Ford's not talking power and torque just yet, but it appears it's not going to quite match the 184 kilowatts and 600 newton meters of the regular Ranger. The Super Duty gets unique wheels and tyres. You can get them either in alloy or steel, 18 inches in diameter, with light truck all-terrain tyres. If you're an old school four-wheel driver, 33 inches, basically that means big and tough, can cope with more, less likely to get a puncture, more grip in the really rough stuff. You've also got bigger brakes in there, and to keep those tyres on, instead of the 6-stud pattern you get on a regular Ranger, you've got an 8-stud pattern, again, to cope with those extra loads. Inside, it is very much regular Ford Ranger, although I should point out this one has one slight difference. It is a prototype, so it's got a kill switch there. That's not going to happen on the production cars, obviously. The rest of it, it's sort of towards the more basic end of the Ranger layout. So you've got cloth trim, for example, you've got vinyl floors. They were chosen on purpose. It's all about being able to obviously deal with mud and dirt a lot easier and being a lot easier to clean out. You've got the big 12-inch infotainment screen in the centre, and all the tech that you get in a regular Ranger, right down to a 360-degree camera, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, all those sorts of things that anyone driving a vehicle these days is going to want. Digital instrument cluster as well, and a whole bunch of the active safety features that are pretty much crucial these days for people driving work vehicles. You've also got some little extras, things like here, for example, you can actually mount things like a computer, a bracket to hold a computer or phone. So they put a little bit of extra thoughtfulness in there, and of course, Super Duty slashed across the dash. And one of the coolest features in this car is a thing that Ford calls Smart Hitch and onboard scales. Now, it doesn't actually weigh the car, but what you've actually got is sensors in each corner of the car in the suspension system, and it can actually precisely measure the droop in that suspension to then calculate how much weight is over each wheel, how much additional weight you got pushing down on the trailer, or you've got loaded into the car. It's all about making sure the car is loaded safely and legally. It's the sort of thing that will be super handy for people who are carrying heavy loads and obviously get used a fair bit in a car like this. Now the Super Duty will be available in 4 body styles. You've either got a single cab chassis, a super cab chassis, or the dual cab, either available as a cab chassis or the ute body that you're seeing here. The Super Duty also has a pretty cool story behind it. Ford went out to mining companies, forestry workers, farmers, emergency services, anyone who uses a ute for work purposes, and they asked what they would put in their ideal vehicle, and this is the result. Now in some instances it actually meant missing out some features. So for example, the stop-start system that comes standard on a Ranger, well, it doesn't exist on this car because some companies said they have an always-on requirement. The engine always has to be running, so that system's gone. Still, it's created a ute that's obviously going to have pretty broad appeal across the working base, the people who use those cars for work. But it'll also go a lot deeper than that. There's a lot of families, a lot of grey nomads who like taking off around the country. They like hauling heavy loads. They want to take everyone and everything with them. This car does it from the factory. It's got all that weight carrying ability, so you can see that appeal spreading far wider than just the work industries. Of course, the one thing we don't know yet is the price. There's a heck of a lot of engineering work and a lot more hardware that's gone into this thing, and clearly that won't be cheap. Ford isn't giving any clues yet, but I don't know, if you start looking at the main competitor, clearly it's the Toyota Land Cruiser 70 series. It kicks off at around about $80,000. You then got the Ineos Grenadier, well, it's well into 6 figures. If we're guessing, maybe it'd start somewhere in between those two, hopefully closer to the 80 grand mark, but they're all the sorts of things we'll learn closer to the 2026 on sale date of the Super Duty. Obviously between now and then we're going to tell you a lot more about this car, hopefully get behind the wheel at some time. Until then, make sure you like this channel, subscribe, and tell us everything you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching, see you next time.